Hey everyone, like I talked about in class, I'm going to try to start flipping the classroom by kind of going over in advance what we're going to do that week. And that is going to save us a lot of time in class so that you have more time to write, more time to get your multiple choice done, and more time for me to come around and conference with you individually to make the class truly just like a writing workshop that'll just be chill and we'll have music going on. You can come and go as you want while you're working. And if this works out the way I think it could, it's going to make us more efficient and we can just keep doing this all the way throughout May. But we'll see, maybe I'm being too optimistic. Okay, so this week we're going to be going over the Gandhi speech, which is right here. And you have to do a rhetorical analysis on it. And you can see it's a rhetorical analysis because it's just like a big speech that's in front of you. Big old article. Okay, already realizing I should have timed myself. Try to get done with this in 15 minutes, but we'll see. Okay, so on the rhetorical, I would write a big old space cat out on the top of it. I don't know if you'll be able to do this in the test because I think they're all electronic now, but I think they give you some scratch paper. So let's read this prompt first. In 1930, Mohandas Gandhi led a nonviolent march in India protesting Britain's colonial monopoly on and taxation of an essential resource, salt. The Salt March, as it came to be known, was a triggering moment for the larger civil disobedience movement that eventually won India independence from Britain in 1947. So they eventually won. All right, India kicked Britain out of their country. Shortly before the Salt March, so that's interesting. Shortly before, Gandhi had written to Viceroy Lord Irwin, the representative of the British Crown in India. The passage below is the conclusion of that letter, so it's an excerpt. Read the passage carefully, then in a well-written essay, analyze the rhetorical choices Gandhi makes to present his case to Lord Irwin. Okay, so who is the speaker? It's Gandhi, right? What is the purpose? Well, we're going to have to read the essay to find out because all they say is that he presented his case. So the purpose at this point is kind of, we don't know. The audience is Lord Irwin, who, again, is is sort of the representative of the British Crown in India. The context here, I think, is really important, all right? So he wrote this letter right before their march in 1930, which is right here. They eventually won their independence 17 years later in 1947. So this must have been the kickoff against all of these years of Indian protest against Britain, which is kind of interesting. And if you go down, like sometimes I recommend reading footnotes first. If you read number 2, the India Salt Act, 1882, enforced the British colonial government's monopoly on the collection, manufacture, and sale of salt in India. So just as an aside, what this means is that, the Indian people were probably getting screwed. I'm sure that massive limits were placed upon them by Britain to collect, manufacture, or sell salt. I mean, they might not have even let the Indian citizens do that themselves. Now, that Indian Salt Act was in 1882. So if we come back up here and go like this, it's 48 years since the passage of that act, where the Indians finally, under Gandhi, were like, we've had enough of this. And it didn't end up fully getting resolved until 1947. So I think that's kind of interesting. So the exigence could be like, hey, I'm about ready to march on you. You better listen to this. So about to march, okay? You would want to get a lot of this stuff in your intro just to sketch out the rhetorical situation. Gandhi is speaking to Lord Irwin. Here is the context. And, the purpose, although it doesn't say anything here yet in the prompt, the purpose is probably to get them to stop being such jerks about salt and to let Indians do with it what they will because it's coming out of their ground. So you could put that in your purpose for now, and if you come up with a more specific purpose later after the speech, you could do that. Okay, so let's read the speech and see what choices, which is the C of Space Cat, what rhetorical choices, and those are down here too, he uses in order to be effective. Now remember, the A of Space Cat is appeals, And it's kind of an old-timey word, but it just means like appealing to somebody through your credibility. Don't say that Greek word. Through emotions. I'm just going to put em. Or through reasoning. Don't ever say that somebody uses reasoning in their speech. Everybody does, but I'm just going to put it out there anyway because that's what the appeals are. And then tone is something we don't know yet because we don't know what tone he's speaking to Lord Irwin in. But again, let's go ahead and read it. This is a selection of his letter, and he's writing this to Lord Irwin just before he's getting ready to do the Salt March. So here we go. I know that in embarking on nonviolence, I shall be running what might fairly be termed a mad risk, but the victories of truth have never been won without risks, often of the gravest character. Conversion of a nation that has consciously or unconsciously preyed upon another, so like he wants to convert Britain to India's point of view, far more numerous, far more ancient, and no less cultured than itself, is worth any amount of risk. So I would say Gandhi right now, he just has a real direct tone to Lord Irwin. I mean, he's just coming out and punching him right in the face. I have deliberately, starting right here, used the word conversion, for my ambition is no less than to convert the British people through nonviolence and thus to make them see the wrong they have done to India. I do not seek to harm your people. I want to serve them, even as I want to serve my own. I believe that I always serve them. Okay, so he's kind of telling Britain, like, look, I'm sort of on your side here, okay? I'm kind of on your side. Now, to get through this video quick, I'm not going to write down every single thing I say. I'm just going to assume you guys are writing some of it down. But this is some kind of strategy here where he's saying, like, look, I'm on your side. Okay, let's keep reading starting on line 16. I served them, the British, up to 1919 blindly. But when my eyes were opened, I conceived non-cooperation. The object still was to serve them. I employed the same weapon that I have in all humility, successfully used against the dearest members of my own family. So he says he used nonviolence against his own family. So let's see what he means by there. If I have equal love for your people with mine, it will not long remain hidden. It will be acknowledged by them, even as the members of my family acknowledged after they had tried me for several years. Okay, so basically there's this unknown beef going on with Gandhi and his family. And Gandhi, and we don't need to know what that beef is, but Gandhi is saying, look, I loved them through it. I sort of used the same tactics with them as I used with you. And therefore, Britain, you shouldn't feel totally pointed out by this because I'm non-partial, I'm unbiased, I'm objective. I do this to everybody. I do this to my family. I do this to you. Again, what kind of rhetorical choice is that? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Then let's start right here. If the people join me, as I expect they will, the sufferings they will undergo, and he's talking about the British, unless the British nation sooner retraces its steps, will be enough to melt the stoniest hearts. So he's kind of using, some scare tactics in here, I think, and he uses more of these as we go along. The plan through civil disobedience will be to combat such evils as I have sampled out. If we want to sever the British connection, it is because of such evils. When they are removed, the path becomes easy. Then the way to friendly negotiation will be open. So he's kind of telling Lord Irwin, look, things are going to get good if you just listen to me. If the British commerce with India is purified of greed, you will have no difficulty in recognizing our independence. I invite you then to pave the way for immediate removal of those evils and thus open a way for a real conference between equals, interested only in promoting the common good of mankind through voluntary fellowship and in arranging terms of mutual help and commerce equally suited to both. So right here, he's kind of saying, look, we could both win by this, okay? It's not just like, it's not a lose-lose, win-lose situation. It could be win-win. Then he says, you have unnecessarily laid stress upon communal problems that unhappily affect this land. Back to the direct tone, right? He's done being sort of conciliatory, which means friendly. Important though they undoubtedly are for the consideration of any scheme of government, they have little bearing on the greater problems which are above communities and which affect them all equally. But if you cannot see your way to deal with these evils, and my letter makes no appeal to your heart, on the 11th day of this month, I shall proceed with co-workers from the ashram, which if you look down at number 1 is a spiritual monastery. as I can take to disregard the provisions of the salt laws. So right here, Gandhi's saying, look, man, we're about ready to march. If you don't do this, we're going to do that. I regard this tax to be the most iniquitous of all the poor, from the poor man's standpoint. I regard this as the most unfair thing ever. Direct tone. As the independence movement is essentially for the poorest in the land, the beginning will be made with this evil. The wonder is that we have submitted to the cruel monopoly for so long. It is, I know, open to you, Irwin, to frustrate my design by arresting me. I hope that there will be tens of thousands ready in a disciplined manner to take up the work after me and, in the act of disobeying the Salt Act, to lay themselves open to the penalties of a law that should never have disfigured the statute book. So he's saying, look, if you arrest me, I hope more come in my place. I have no desire to cause you unnecessary embarrassment. Okay, so again, he's kind of being conciliatory here. He's like, look, I don't want to do this, all right? Or any at all, so far as I can help. If you think that there is any substance in my letter, and if you will care to discuss matters with me, and if to that end you will like me to postpone publication of this letter, I shall gladly refrain on receipt of a telegram to that effect soon after this reaches you. So he's like, look, I'm giving you an out. And you know what, for all we know as the readers, these letters are probably private, right? This is like, obviously, no internet, no email. And he's giving him a way out. He's trying to let Lord Irwin save face, basically. Okay, I'll start here. You will, however, do me the favor not to deflect me from my course unless you can see your way to conform to the substance of this letter. This letter is not in any way intended as a threat, but of course it is. He's just being polite about it. But as a simple and sacred duty, peremptory on a civil resistor like myself. Therefore, I am having it specially delivered by a young English friend who believes in the Indian cause. I think that was cool that he said that. He's like, look, there are some people on your side who actually believe me. And is a full believer in nonviolence, and whom Providence seems to have sent to me, as it were, for the very purpose. That's a cool way to end it, right? He's like, look, one of your own citizens is on my side, and he's the one, delivering this letter to you. Okay, so that is sort of my quick analysis of the speech. There's a lot of sort of ethos going on. He is sort of showing himself as being tough. But part of that has to do with his tone, right? I mean, that both leads to toughness. You know, he's sort of conciliatory sometimes. He's sort of in your face at other times. There's definite emotional appeals going on. I mean, there's a lot of scare tactics. I think part of his emotions is trying to create some sympathy with them for being poor and some empathy. And, also by saying, look, one of your people is working with me. I mean, I don't think you could build a whole paragraph around that. I think that has to be some kind of rhetorical choice that maybe you could glom on to some other moves that he's making in the speech when you're talking about this in your essay. Okay, in the interest of going fast through this, we are going to read just the first two paragraphs we're going to read the intro and the third body paragraph of an essay about this that scored a 141. Okay, this was the ultimate score here. And I want to show you how he did his commentary, because that's where a lot of students are having problems. And that's understandable, it's just hard. So here's the kid. During the British occupation of India, so right here, they exerted colonial monopolies and control against the Indian people. The Indians rebelled against these monopolies, similar to the American Revolution against the British. However, the movement in India was largely driven by nonviolent acts of civil disobedience led by Gandhi. Okay, so I hope you can see that right here, the kid is trying to sketch out the rhetorical situation, all right? He could have put more in there about dates. He could have put more in there about the audience, Lord Irwin. He could have put more space elements in there, in other words. But you know what? It's okay. Obviously, he did well enough for the score to give him a 141. Throughout his letter, Gandhi applies a conciliatory yet forceful tone, strategy number one. He places the blame onto the British, I'm assuming that's number two, and he continually repeats his plan for the march in order to convince the British to reverse their policies. I'm assuming that's three. Now you notice how these are his own words, the student's own words. He's not coming out and just slavishly being like, well, I got to say those rhetorical choices like metaphor, imagery, simile, tone. No, you don't have to do that. You can talk about the three things that a speaker or writer does to make themselves effective, the three choices. And this kid just happened to put it in his own words. Okay, so let's skip down here to number 3. Now, he said that he's going to talk about how he places blame on the British as his second strategy. So I'm hoping that's what he talks about in his second body paragraph, because that's the roadmap he laid out in here. Gandhi's rhetorical tactics place the blame on the British. See, thank God. Okay, look, this helps your line of reasoning. A reader is expecting your second body paragraph to talk about what you said you were going to talk about. This helps the line of reasoning. Okay, the student says right here, when he continually reassures them of his nonviolence, he is demonstrating that the Indians are not going to act violently, thereby indirectly asking the British if they too will follow the Indians. He uses phrases such as, unless the British nation ... retraces its steps, and if the British commerce with India is purified of greed. Can I notice a couple things? He did not quote whole huge passages. They were very short, and that's good. Okay, that's about all you need. I mean, you could do a little bit more. Notice how the ellipse he took out the words, he or she, to make it read smoothly over the ellipse. That's what you have to do. You can do that. Now, what I want you to know is this, and then we're almost done with the video. This whole part is where the student is writing commentary. Remember, that second row of the rubric is evidence and commentary. But commentary could also be called explanation, like why am I, here's my explanation for why I'm using this evidence to show how he's blaming the British. It can also be called reasoning. Okay, so all that's the same. But let's look at how this kid is explaining, hey, why did I just use these quotes up here, all right, to show that one of Gandhi's tactics is to blame the British. Here he goes. And I think this is great. These statements are Gandhi's way of placing responsibility onto the British. They evoke the sense that the violence and conflict are the British's fault, not the Indians. In this way, Gandhi leaves it to the British to decide whether they want to stop their actions, thereby evoking a sense of guilt and responsibility in the British. These methods serve Gandhi's purpose of asking the British to revise their laws without outrightly asking. His methods make the British aggressors and, in this way, makes the British consider their position more fully. Okay, can you see how that commentary is so full, okay? And I know that the commentary is the hard part because a lot of you are making about that much commentary and that's it. But you can see how you can go into much more depth with your commentary, just like the student did. One way to do it is by considering space again, all right? When you're talking about the reasoning or the explanation or the commentary of why the evidence you chose right here is effective to achieve the purpose that you said Gandhi is trying to achieve right here. So again, you could bring in space elements, all right? He again mentions, the speaker. He's mentioning the audience. He mentions the purpose again. And he's mentioning actually multiple purposes for the British to revise. He's trying to make them feel a sense of guilt. So he's kind of bringing in, the appeals part of Space Cat. So again, it's easy up here to talk about your rhetorical choice. It's easy right here to talk about examples of rhetorical choice. It is very, very difficult right here to talk about how you're explaining these things. Okay, so I hope that helps. I know this is kind of quick, but I don't want to make your homework too much. And I hope this helps. And we'll obviously have a lot of time to talk about it in class one-on-one.